Hello and welcome. It is time to let the day and all of its concerns simply fade away. Find your most comfortable position and gently close your eyes. Let's begin with a single, slow, deep breath. Breathe in deeply, and as you breathe out, feel the tension begin to leave your body. There is nothing else you need to do tonight, nothing to focus on, and nothing to remember. The story I am about to tell is just a quiet murmur in the background, a calm and steady presence. Tonight, we will travel back to 13th century France, to the dawn of a monumental project, to hear the story of the brutal reality of building a great cathedral. So just relax and allow the sound of my voice to accompany you as you drift towards a deep and peaceful sleep. Our story begins in the year 1220 in a bustling French city. The day is one of great ceremony and celebration. The bishop, in his finest silk and gold vestments, stands before a great crowd of nobles, merchants, and common folk. A choir sings. The air is thick with the holy scent of incense. A prayer is offered up to God. With great solemnity, the bishop blesses a single, massive, and perfectly cut cornerstone, and with the help of the master mason, it is lowered into a deep, freshly dug trench. The building of the new cathedral has officially begun. It is a holy work, an offering to God that will take more than 100 years to complete, a testament to the faith and ambition of the city. For you, however, an apprentice named Thomas, this ceremony is a distant spectacle. Your reality is not one of prayers and incense. Your reality is mud, sweat, and the jarring, repetitive shock of iron on stone. Because for you, the cathedral did not begin today with a prayer. It began 6 months ago in a noisy, dusty, and dangerous hole in the earth 10 miles outside the city walls. It began in the quarry. The quarry is the true birthplace of the cathedral. It is a great open wound in the side of a limestone hill, a chaotic landscape of jagged cliffs, piles of rubble, and a constant choking white dust that coats everything and everyone. The air here does not smell of incense, but of iron, of sweat, and of the dry, chalky scent of the stone itself. The only music is the relentless, deafening symphony of labor, the sharp crack of hammers on wedges, the grating screech of stone being dragged, the shouts of the foreman, and the low-pained groans of the oxen pulling the great carts. You are at the bottom of the social ladder here, an apprentice in the guild of stonemasons. Your job, for now, is not the noble art of carving, but the brutal, mindless labor of the quarryman. Your days are long, stretching from the first gray light of dawn to the last fading rays of sunset. Your tools are simple and heavy, a 9-pound sledgehammer, a set of iron wedges, and a crowbar. The work is a slow and violent conversation with the earth. A master quarrier, a man whose hands are thick and gnarled as old roots, first reads the face of the rock. He can see the invisible lines of the stone's grain, the lita carry, the natural bedding plane, along which the stone will agree to split. He marks these lines with a piece of charcoal. Then the hard work begins. You and the other apprentices must carve a channel into the rock along this line. You hold a heavy iron chisel while another apprentice swings a sledgehammer, driving it into the stone. The shock of each blow travels up the chisel, into your hands, and through your entire body. Then it is your turn to swing the hammer, your back and shoulders screaming in protest as you heave the heavy tool up and bring it down, again and again. The work is a trance of pure physical exertion, your mind narrowed to the single repetitive task. When the channel is deep enough, a line of dry wooden wedges is hammered into it. Water is poured over them, and you wait. You wait for the slow, immense, and silent power of the swelling wood to do its work. You learn to recognize the low, groaning sound the rock makes just before it gives way. You learn to scramble out of the way just before a multi-ton slab of limestone, with a sound like a thunderclap, shears away from the cliff face and crashes to the quarry floor. This is a place of constant, casual danger. The fine limestone dust you breathe all day settles deep in your lungs. You see the older quarrymen, their chests rattling with what they call mason's disease, their lives being slowly shortened with every breath they take. You see men with missing fingers, lost to a misplaced hammer blow or a shifting stone. You learn very quickly that the stone is not a dead thing. It is a heavy, unpredictable beast, and it will kill you without a moment's hesitation if you lose your focus. Once the great slab is freed, it must be broken down into manageable blocks, the ashlars that will form the walls of the cathedral. This is another long, laborious process of hammering and wedging. Then comes the next great challenge: transportation. The blocks, some weighing more than a small house, must be moved from this hole in the ground to the city 10 miles away. They are first levered with immense effort onto massive two-wheeled wooden carts. These carts are then yoked to a team of a dozen or more oxen. The roads are not paved highways. They are little more than deep, muddy tracks. You are assigned to a cart crew. Your job is to walk alongside the groaning, swaying cart, to heave against the wheels with your shoulder when it gets bogged down in the mud, to shove rocks under the wheels to keep it from sliding backward on a hill, and to pray that the thick wooden axle does not break. The journey is a slow, agonizing crawl. A good day is one where you cover 3 miles. Some days, when the rain is heavy and the road turns into a river of mud, you cover less than 1. You sleep under the cart at night, your body aching, and you rise at dawn to begin the struggle anew. After a week of this torturous travel, your cart finally rumbles through the city gates. You're now at the construction site, the loggia. It is a vast, muddy, and chaotic field of activity, dominated by the deep, yawning trenches of the foundations. For the first time, you see where the stone you have suffered so much to extract and to transport is destined to go. A different team of masons, the setters, takes over, guiding the block from your cart onto a sledge. You watch as they use a complex system of levers and rollers to maneuver the great stone to the edge of the foundation trench. With quiet commands and immense skill, they lower it into place. Yes. The first stone in what will one day be a wall that will reach towards heaven. Your part in its journey is over. There's no word of thanks. Your foreman simply barks an order. You are to take the empty cart and the exhausted oxen and begin the long, slow 10-mile journey back to the quarry. There is another stone waiting for you. For more than a year, your life is a slow, grinding rhythm of transit between the quarry and the city. You walk the 10-mile road so many times that you come to know every rut, every treacherous patch of mud, every ancient tree that marks the way. You watch the seasons change on that road, from the sucking mud of spring to the choking dust of summer to the frozen, iron-hard earth of winter. You are a human shuttle, a part of the great slow conveyor belt that is feeding the insatiable appetite of the new cathedral. Then one day, you are reassigned. Your time as a quarryman and a cart hand is over. You are now to remain at the construction site, the loggia, full-time. It is a promotion of sorts, a sign that your apprenticeship is progressing. We will now learn the work of the builder, not just the supplier. The construction site is a city within the city. It is a sprawling, chaotic, and yet highly organized community, enclosed by its own wooden fence. Inside, there are long, low-lying workshops for the carpenters, the glaziers, and the stone carvers. There is a bustling blacksmith's forge, its chimney belching black smoke, the constant ringing clang of the hammer on the anvil, providing the site's heartbeat. There are great open-sided sheds for the storage of timber and finished stones, and a counting house where the master of works, a man who can read and write, keeps his meticulous accounts. The air is filled with the shouts of foremen, the creak of wooden wheels, and the fine, pervasive dust of stone and dried mortar. Your first task here is, if anything, even less glamorous than the work in the quarry. You are assigned to the foundation crew. Your new world is a trench. The foundations of a great cathedral are a monumental work of engineering in themselves. For a building that will soar 300 feet into the air, its foundations must be driven deep into the earth, down to the solid bedrock. You and hundreds of other unskilled laborers and apprentices are tasked with this great excavation. The work is done entirely by hand. You are given a simple wooden shovel, its edge perhaps shod with a thin strip of iron, and a woven wicker basket. You stand often an ankle deep, freezing cold water at the bottom of a great muddy trench, and you dig. You heave the heavy wet clay into your basket, one shovelful at a time. When the basket is full, you pass it to the man on the scaffold above you, who passes it to another, a human chain that removes the earth from the whole basket by painful basket. The work is a wet, muddy, and miserable affair. The clay walls of the trench are shored up with heavy timber beams, but the risk of a collapse is a constant, quiet fear. You work in a dim, subterranean world, the sounds of the city muffled, the sky a narrow, distant slit of gray far above. You are not building a glorious monument to God. You are digging a great, ugly scar into the earth. At the same time, another essential and brutal process is underway: the making of the mortar. Not far from your trench is the lime kiln. You watch as other laborers feed the kiln with limestone and keep a great fire roaring for days on end. The intense heat transforms the limestone into quicklime, a highly caustic and dangerous powder. This quicklime is then brought to the mortar pits. Here, men with long wooden hoes mix it with sand and water. The chemical reaction is violent. The mixture hisses and steams, releasing a choking, alkaline fume. The mortar makers, their faces and hands covered in white powder, are constantly at risk of severe chemical burns. The mortars they create, however, is the lifeblood of the cathedral, the powerful glue that will hold the great stones together for 1,000 years. After months of this relentless digging, the foundation trenches have finally reached the required depth. A thick bed of rubble and rough stones is laid down and tamped to create a solid base. The first true stones of the cathedral, the ones you spent a year of your life hauling from the quarry, are ready to be laid. This is the work of the master masons, the aristocrats of the building site. You, as an apprentice, are allowed only to assist. Your job is to mix the mortar to a perfect thick consistency and to bring it to the masons in a wooden hod. You watch in awe as they work. They are men of immense skill and precision. They use simple tools, a plumb line, a set square, a level, to ensure that this first crucial course of foundation stones is perfectly, absolutely level. They work with a quiet, focused intensity, speaking a language of measurements and angles that you do not yet understand. A massive, multi-ton block of limestone is lowered into the trench with a great winch. The master mason guides it with a series of quiet hand signals and shouted commands, maneuvering it with heavy iron crowbars until it rests perfectly in its bed of mortar. He checks it with his level, makes a tiny adjustment, and then moves on to the next one. You spend another season in this muddy, subterranean world hauling mortars and watching the masters at their craft. Slowly, painstakingly, the great labyrinthine footprint of the cathedral is laid out in massive, perfectly joined blocks of stone. It is a structure of immense strength and precision, but it is a structure that no one will ever see again. It is destined to be buried, a silent, powerful secret hidden deep in the earth. Finally, the day comes when the last foundation stone is laid, and the trenches are backfilled with earth. The scar on the land has been healed, but it is now filled with a skeleton of stone and sweat. You have not yet carved a single gargoyle, nor set a single stone of a soaring vault. You have spent years of your life engaged in nothing but the brutal, earthy, and invisible work of the beginning. But the foundation is complete. The stage is set. Now, the walls can begin their slow, patient climb towards God. With the great subterranean foundations now complete and buried, the construction site transforms. The deep, muddy trenches are gone, replaced by a vast, flat, and empty expanse of packed earth. The first time you can see the entire footprint of the future cathedral, a ghostly outline waiting to be given form. The master mason, a man of immense and almost mystical authority, now begins the sacred geometry of his work. You watch as he and his senior journeyman use long, knotted ropes and wooden stakes to lay out the ground plan of the cathedral directly onto the earth. They are not just measuring distances. They are performing a kind of architectural ritual. Mark the precise locations of the great piers that will support the nave, the curving walls of the apse, and the radiating chapels. The complex celestial design, which had existed only in the master's mind and on a few precious sheets of parchment, is now drawn upon the earth in a web of stakes and strings. After years of working in the quarry or deep in the foundation trenches, your apprenticeship now enters its true and most important phase. You are brought into the mason's lodge, the loge. It is a long, timber-framed workshop, open on one side to the bustling construction site. The air inside is cool and dusty, filled with the constant rhythmic tap, tap, tap of wooden mallets on iron chisels. The floor is inches deep in a fine white powder of limestone dust. This is the heart of the craft, the place where the raw, brutalized stone from the quarry is transformed into the precise geometric components of the cathedral. You are assigned to a master mason, an old patient man named Robert, whose hands are gnarled but whose movements are as precise as a watchmaker's. Your first lesson is not in carving, but in seeing. He teaches you how to look at a rough block of stone, to understand its character, to find the subtle signs of its strengths and weaknesses. Then you are given your tools. They are finer, more specialized than the brutal sledgehammers of the quarry. There is the heavy wooden mallet, the claw chiseled with its toothed edge for planing the surface, the flat chisel for smoothing, and the pointed draftsman for cutting the sharp, clean edges. And you are given your first real task, to take a rough, uneven block of limestone and turn it into a perfect rectangular ashlar, a single, humble brick of stone that will find its place in the growing walls. The process is one of painstaking, almost meditative patience. Master Robert gives you a wooden template and shows you how to use a straight edge and a metal scriber to mark the perfect, straight lines on the surface of the rough stone. This is your guide. Anything outside these lines must be removed. You begin with the bustling, using a pointed chisel and the mallet to chip away the largest of the excess stone. It is rough, imprecise work, and your first few blows are clumsy, taking too much or too little. Robert corrects your stance, the angle of your chisel, the rhythm of your blows. You learn to work with the stone, not against it, to listen to the sound it makes, a high, clear ring for a good cut, a dull thud for a poorly placed one. After hours of this rough work, the block begins to approximate the shape of a rectangle. Now the finer work begins. You switch to the claw chisel, its toothed blade allowing you to slowly, methodically plane the surface of the stone, leaving behind a distinctive, raked texture. You work back and forth, your mind focused entirely on the feel of the chisel in your hand, on keeping the surface level and true. Finally, you learn to cut the draft, the perfectly smooth and flat border around the edge of the stone's face. This is the mark of a true mason, the surface against which the next stone will rest. It requires the utmost precision. You use the flat chisel, held at a low angle, to shave away the last minute imperfections until the border is as smooth as polished wood. The work is incredibly demanding, a test of both strength and subtlety. A moment of inattention, a single careless blow of the mallet, can send a crack through the stone, ruining a block that represents weeks of labor, from the quarry to the cart to this very bench. While you are absorbed in this new, difficult craft, the world of the loggia bustles around you. You see the carpenters at their own workbenches, not just building the ever-rising web of scaffolding, but also constructing the complex, curved wooden frameworks, the centerings, which will be used to support the stone arches and vaults until the mortar sets. You see the blacksmith, his forge glowing, endlessly sharpening the blunted chisels of the masons, a task that never, ever ends. After 3 full days of patient, focused labor, your first stone is complete. You run your hand over its surface. It is perfectly flat, its corners a perfect right angle. Master Robert inspects it, his critical eye searching for any flaw, finds none. He gives a single approving nod. "Good," he says. "Now do it again." Before your stone is taken to be placed in the wall, you perform one last, deeply personal act. On the side of the stone that will be hidden in the mortar, the side no one will ever see again, you carve your own, newly chosen mason's mark. A simple, geometric design of 2 crossed lines within a circle. It is your signature. It is the quiet, anonymous declaration that you, Thomas, an apprentice, helped to build this great house of God. You carry your finished stone from the lodge and look out at the construction site. It is no longer a flat, empty space. The first few courses of the cathedral's walls have been laid. Great rising labyrinth of pale, freshly cut stone, now standing 3 feet high. After years of labor that was either brutal or buried, you are finally building something that reaches for the sky. The scar on the earth has been healed, and the great cathedral has begun its slow, patient, and monumental birth. The years pass, marked not by the turning of the seasons, but by the slow, almost imperceptible rising of the stone walls. You are no longer Thomas the apprentice, a boy doing the roughest work in the quarry and the mud-filled trenches. You are now Thomas the journeyman, a skilled mason, and your world has become a vertical one. You no longer work on the ground, but in the sky, upon the vast and ever-growing web of wooden scaffolding that clings like a parasite to the stone skeleton of the cathedral. This scaffolding is a city of timber that grows alongside the city of stone. It is a precarious, creaking world of raw, unseasoned lumber, the great upright poles lashed together with thick, coarse ropes of hemp. The platforms you work on are simple, rough-sawn planks, often slick with rain or morning frost. There are no handrails, no safety nets. A single careless step, a moment of dizziness, a sudden gust of wind is all that separates you from the hard, unforgiving ground 100 feet below. You learn to move with a cat-like sureness of foot, to never make a sudden movement, and to live with the constant, low-level hum of fear as your daily companion. From your perch high on the wall, the world of the construction site is laid out below you like a map. See the ant-like figures of the laborers, the slow, patient crawl of the ox carts, bringing new stones from the quarry, the glowing, smoky heart of the blacksmith's forge. You are no longer a part of that world. You are above it, a member of the elite guild of masons who are engaged in the most skilled and the most dangerous work of all. Your primary task is to receive and set the great shaped stones that are the building blocks of the cathedral. But these stones, some weighing thousands of pounds, cannot be lifted by hand. They must be raised from the ground by the single most impressive and most terrifying machine on the entire construction site, the great treadwheel crane. The crane is a colossal structure of timber, a great swinging arm that towers over the rising walls, its end dangling a thick rope and a heavy iron hook. The genius and the horror of the machine is its power source. It is not powered by oxen or by horses. It is powered by men. The base of the crane is a massive wooden wheel, 15 feet or more in diameter, like a giant hamster wheel. This is the treadwheel. The men who work inside it are at the very bottom of the laboring hierarchy. They are often the poorest of the unskilled laborers, or sometimes convicts. Their labor a form of punishment. Their job is simple. They walk. They walk for hours on end inside this great, dark, creaking wooden wheel. Their combined weight and ceaseless motion turning the axle that winds the great rope and lifts the stone. The work is mind-numbingly monotonous and incredibly dangerous. The men walk on rough wooden slats in near-total darkness, with nothing to see but the curved wall of the wheel in front of them. The only brake is a simple wooden pawl, a ratchet system that is supposed to prevent the wheel from spinning backward under the immense weight of the stone. If that pawl were to break, or if the men were to stumble, the wheel would spin out of control, either throwing the men from it like stones from a sling, or breaking their legs and bodies within its merciless rotating cage. You witness a lifting operation from your place on the high scaffolding. The process is a slow, tense, and highly coordinated ballet of human effort. It begins on the ground. The master mason selects the next required stone, a perfectly cut voussoir that will form part of a great window arch. The laborers on the ground maneuver it into position under the crane's dangling hook. The ropes are secured, and the foreman on the ground shouts a command up to the crane master, who is perched near the top of the machine. The crane master, in turn, shouts down to the men inside the treadwheel. "Walk on," he bellows. You hear the deep, groaning creak of the great wooden axle as the men inside begin their slow, trudging walk. The thick hempen rope, as thick as your arm, tightens, its fibers groaning under the strain. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, majestically, the great half-ton block of limestone lifts from the ground. It begins its slow, swaying ascent. It rises past the lower levels of the scaffolding, a pendulum of immense weight and destructive power. Every man on the wall stops his own work to watch, their bodies pressed flat against the stone, giving the rising block a wide berth. You have all heard stories of a rope snapping, of a block plummeting back to earth, obliterating everything and everyone in its path. As the stone reaches the level of your scaffold, the real, dangerous work begins for you and your team. The crane master cannot see you, relies on a third man, a signalman, who stands on the scaffolding and relays your master mason's commands in a series of coded shouts and hand signals. Easy now. Left. Left. The signalman shouts, and the crane arm creaks slowly to the side. The great stone is now swinging just in front of you. You and the other masons take up your iron crowbars. Your job is to guide this immense swinging weight into its final, precise resting place. It is a task of immense strength and delicate touch. You push and pull with your levers, your muscles straining, your knuckles inches away from being crushed between the new stone and the one already set. Down, ... slow, the signalman cries. The men in the tread wheel, 100 feet below, slow their walk, and the stone begins its final slow descent into a thick bed of wet mortar. The master mason is there, his eye squinted, his hand guiding the final few inches of movement. With a soft, wet squelch, the stone settles into place. He checks it instantly with his plumb line and his level. It is perfect. He gives the final signal. The ropes go slack. The mortal peril of the last few minutes is over. You can breathe again. But there is no time for rest. You look down and you see the men on the ground already positioning the next stone under the hook. The great human-powered crane is ready to begin its slow, groaning, and terrifying ascent once more. The great treadwheel crane is the heart of the construction site, a magnificent and terrible beast that feeds the growing walls. But you, as a journeyman mason, are at the other end of this process. Your work begins where the crane's work ends. It is a craft of immense precision, performed in the most precarious of situations. After a stone block has been heaved and swung into its rough position on the high scaffold, your job is to set it. The process is a race against the slow, inexorable hardening of the mortar. A laborer brings you a hod full of the wet, gritty lime mortar, and you slop a thick, generous bed of it onto the course of stones below. With your trowel, you spread it evenly, your movements quick and practiced. Then, with crowbars and wooden levers, you and your fellow masons guide the new stone into its final place, nudging it millimeter by millimeter until it is perfectly aligned with the stretched cord that marks the line of the wall. The master mason of your crew is there for every single stone, his experienced eye checking your work, his hand holding the plumb line to ensure the wall is rising perfectly. Absolutely true. A mistake of a fraction of an inch here, at 80 feet, could translate into a catastrophic structural failure 100 feet higher and a century later. Often, the stones that arrive from the mason's lodge below are not a perfect fit. It is your job to make the final adjustments, a process called trimming, high on the scaffold. You take out your own set of fine chisels and your mallet, and with the great, open sky around you and the hard ground a dizzying distance below, you perform delicate surgical work on the stone, chipping away a fine layer here, smoothing an edge there until the fit is seamless. To bind the structure together, The masons use iron. The blacksmith's forge below works tirelessly, producing thousands of iron cramps and ties. Your job is to set them. You drill a hole into the stone with a hand-cranked auger, a slow and sweaty process. Then, a boy brings you a small crucible of molten, shimmering lead from a fire on the scaffold. With a steady hand, you pour the liquid lead into the hole, setting the iron cramp and binding the two great stones together with a grip that will last for 1,000 years. The heat of the molten lead, the noxious fumes, the precarious footing it, is just another part of the daily dance with danger. You are not building a simple, solid wall. You're building the skeleton of a great beast. The primary structures that you work on are the great piers, the massive, clustered columns that will eventually support the immense weight of the stone vaults and the roof. Each pier is a complex, three-dimensional puzzle. It is not made of simple, rectangular blocks. It is an assembly of dozens of smaller, intricately cut stones, each with a specific curve and a specific place. You work from wooden templates, matching each stone to its corresponding part of the great design. The years blur into a single, long season of labor. You are no longer the boy who arrived from the quarry. You're a man, your body hardened, your face weathered by a decade of sun and wind and cold. Your life is a cycle of seasons, lived high on the side of the growing cathedral. In the summer, the pale limestone reflects the sun with a blinding intensity. The heat is a physical, oppressive weight, and the sweat runs into your eyes, stinging them with the salt and the lime from the mortar. Your thirst is a constant companion, and you drink a weak, watery ale from a leather flask, as the river water is considered unsafe. In the winter, the work is a different kind of misery. A bitter, relentless wind whips around the high scaffolds, seeking out every gap in your woolen clothes, chilling you to the bone. The rain and sleet make the wooden planks treacherous, coating them with a thin, invisible layer of ice. On these days, every step is a calculated risk. The mortar can freeze, ruining the bond between the stones, and the work must often halt, leaving you to shiver in a half-finished lodge, unpaid for the day. You are part of a complex and rigidly structured society. The masons are the elite, the masters of the site. You have your own lodge, your own secret signs and words, a way of recognizing a fellow craftsman from any part of Christendom. There's a deep and quiet pride in your guild. You work alongside the carpenters, a guild with its own skills and its own pride. You rely on them completely. Their scaffolding is the only thing that keeps you from a certain death. And they, in turn, rely on the precision of your stone setting to support their great wooden centerings. The temporary frameworks upon which the stone arches are built, it is a relationship of mutual dependence, marked by a quiet professional respect. Beneath you, both literally and socially, are the great anonymous masses of the unskilled laborers. They are the men who dig the clay, mix the mortar, and walk the endless, terrifying circle of the great treadwheel crane. You earn in a day what they might earn in a week. You sleep in a slightly better hut. You eat a slightly better grade of bread. It is a small but fiercely guarded distinction. They are the muscle of the cathedral. You are its hands and its mind. Slowly, impossibly, the great walls rise higher. They pass the level of the side aisle roofs. They rise to the height of the triforium gallery, the decorated walkway that runs the length of the nave. You are now working at a height of over 150 feet. The people on the ground are small, indistinct figures. The entire city is spread out below you like a map. You can see the winding river, the patchwork of fields beyond the walls, the whole of your known world. You are building something that is now the tallest structure for 100 miles in any direction. It is a great hollow canyon of stone, open to the sky, a place of wind and echoes and a constant vertiginous sense of peril. But the most difficult, the most dangerous, and the most beautiful work is still to come. The work of enclosing the sky itself, of building the great soaring vaults, is about to begin. Years of your life are now bound up in the slow, vertical journey of the cathedral's walls. You have become a man of the heights, your sense of balance as natural as breathing, your fear a constant quiet companion that you have learned to live with. As the walls rise past the triforium gallery, you begin the work on the final, highest level, the clear story. This is a new and more delicate challenge. You are no longer building thick, solid walls, but a series of slender, elegant stone piers, separated by immense, gaping voids that will one day become the great windows. The structure feels lighter, more skeletal, and somehow even more precarious. The wind-up here is a constant, powerful force, whipping at your clothes and threatening to unbalance you on the narrow wooden planks of the scaffold. Your skill as a mason is now truly put to the test. You are entrusted with the task of cutting and setting the intricate stone tracery, the delicate, lace-like framework of stone that will hold the vast stained glass windows. The work is slow and requires a jeweler's precision. You work from a full-size drawing, a tracing, laid out by the master mason on a great plastered floor in the lodge below. You use fine, sharp chisels and a light mallet, carefully carving the complex curves and cusps of the design. A single misplaced blow can shatter a week's worth of work. It is a nerve-wracking and deeply focused craft, a bridge between the brute force of masonry and the fine art of sculpture. It is during this phase, as the cathedral reaches for its full, majestic height, that the ever-present theme of mortal peril, which hums quietly in the background of every day, suddenly roars to the forefront. It happens on a bright, clear summer afternoon. A massive central stone for the arch of a great clerestory window is being lifted. It is a routine operation, one you have witnessed 1,000 times. The men below attach the ropes. The signal is given. The men in the great treadwheel crane begin their slow, trudging walk. The great stone begins its swaying, majestic ascent. You are on the high scaffold, waiting to receive it, your crowbar in hand. The stone is halfway up, perhaps 100 feet in the air, when it happens. There is a sound unlike any other on the work site. It is not the crack of stone or the splintering of wood. It is a sharp, explosive snap, like a giant's whip. For a split second, there is a profound and unnatural silence. All motion seems to freeze. You look up and see that the great hempen rope, as thick as your thigh, has parted. Its frayed ends whip through the air like angry snakes. The great stone hangs in the air for an impossible, weightless moment. And then it falls. It does not fall cleanly. It strikes the scaffolding on its way down with a series of catastrophic, splintering impacts. Now the air is filled with the scream of shattering timber and the screams of men. The stone, a half-ton of death, smashes through 2 levels of scaffolding as if they were made of twigs, and then hits the ground with a sickening final thud that you feel in the soles of your feet, even high on the wall. The horror is not over. The treadwheel, its immense load suddenly gone, is now unbalanced. Freed from the strain, it begins to spin in reverse, propelled by the weight of the men still inside it. The breaking pall, unable to handle the sudden violent force, shatters. The great wheel spins with an uncontrollable, accelerating fury. The men inside are no longer walking. They are being thrown against the inside of the rotating cage, their bodies broken and mangled by the merciless centrifugal force. A terrible, stunned silence descends upon the entire worksite, broken only by the groans of the wounded. The work stops completely. The master of works, his face a pale, grim mask, begins to shout orders. Men scramble down from the high scaffolds. The dead are gathered with a quiet, terrible reverence and laid out on the ground, their bodies covered with canvas sheets. The wounded, those who have survived, are carried to the small infirmary run by the local monks. You and the other masons on the high scaffold, who were spared by a few feet of distance, make your way down to the ground on trembling legs. The sense of your own mortality is a cold, metallic taste in your mouth. You knew the work was dangerous, but the danger was an abstract concept, a story you told about other cathedrals, other men. Now it is real, a brutal and undeniable fact. Written in the blood of your friends and colleagues on the stones of the cathedral floor, that evening a somber mass is held for the dead. The next day the work does not resume. Days given to repairing the shattered scaffolding, to clearing the debris, and to tending to the wounded. The great crane is inspected, its ropes checked and rechecked. No one is formally blamed. In this age of faith and fatalism, the accident is seen as an act of God, a terrible test of their resolve. On the third day, the foreman's horn blows again. You climb the scaffolding once more, your movements more cautious, your mind more sober than before. The mood on the work site is grim, subdued, but the work continues. The cathedral is a hungry god, has taken its sacrifice of blood and bone, and it still demands more. You pick up your mallet and your chisel, you look at the vast empty space of the window you are building, and with a quiet, somber resolve, you get back to work. The walls must rise. With the clerestory walls finally reaching their full soaring height, the cathedral is now a great, hollow skeleton of stone, a magnificent and strangely desolate canyon open to the sky. The work on the ground, the endless cycle of the quarry and the foundations, is now a distant memory. Your entire world is now the sky. You have become a creature of the high scaffolds, a man who lives and works in a precarious, man-made world of wood and rope, clinging to the side of a stone mountain. The great structure, though it has reached its full height, is still profoundly vulnerable. It is a shell, and without a roof to protect it, the wind and the rain will slowly, inexorably, erode the fresh mortar and weaken the very stones you have so carefully set. The next great task, therefore, is to give the cathedral its hat, a vast and heavy timber roof. This phase of the construction belongs not to you, the masons, but to the other elite guild of the worksite, the carpenters. Their work, you have come to realize, is a craft of equal skill and peril to your own. The process begins far away from the city in the deep, ancient oak forests of the kingdom. You hear the stories from the lumbermen. They speak of the search for the perfect trees, ancient oaks that have been growing for 300 years. Their trunks straight, tall, and wide enough to serve as the primary beams for the roof. They describe the immense labor of felling these giants with nothing but axes and handsaws, and the slow, difficult journey of floating the massive logs down the rivers to the city. On the ground of the loggia, in a vast, open-sided workshop, the master carpenters perform their own intricate geometry. The floor is a great tracing board, and upon it they lay out the full-size design of one of the great triangular roof trusses. Every angle, every joint is marked with an absolute precision. You watch them work. They do not have the fine chisels of the mason. Their tools are larger, built for wood, not stone. They use great Tuman saws to cut the massive beams to length. They use sharp, heavy adzees and broad axes to shape the timbers. The rhythmic thunk of their tools, a constant, woody counterpoint to the sharp tap of the mason's mallet. They carve the complex mortise and tenon joints that will lock the great beams together, a form of wooden puzzle-making on a colossal scale. There are no nails or metal screws. The entire structure will be held together by the tightness of its own joinery and by heavy hand-carved oak pegs hammered into place. When a single, massive roof truss, weighing many tons, is complete, the great treadwheel crane is once again called into service. It is a slow, nerve-wracking process to hoist the immense, awkward, triangular shape of wood into the air. The whole worksite stops to watch as the truss is slowly, carefully, lifted 150 feet, and then gently, painstakingly lowered into place atop the stone walls of the nave. Your own job as a mason is to prepare the tops of the walls for the arrival of these beams. You work on the highest, most exposed part of the structure, the narrow walkway of the parapet, ensuring the stone surface is perfectly level to receive the great weight of the roof. One by one, the trusses are raised and set in place, a series of great wooden ribs that form the skeleton of the roof. Then, the carpenters, like spiders on a vast web, begin their own dance on the high scaffolds. They swarm over the trusses, laying the long horizontal purlins and the thousands of rafters that will form the deck of the roof. They move with a terrifying, nimble confidence, walking along the narrow beams, their hammers and saws dangling from their belts. The work is incredibly dangerous. There are no safety ropes. A single slippery patch of moss, a sudden gust of wind, a moment of distraction, and a man can simply vanish from the sky, his scream a brief fading note in the air. Falls from the roof are a common and accepted cause of death on the work site. When the wooden skeleton is complete, the final stage of the roofing begins. The roofers are a separate guild, men who specialize in the hot, dirty, and dangerous work of covering the roof. They ascend the steep pitch of the roof, carrying sheets of heavy, soft lead. A forge is set up on the highest level of the stone structure, and the lead is heated until it is soft and malleable. The roofers then beat the lead sheets into shape and nail them to the wooden deck, carefully overlapping each piece to create a continuous, waterproof skin. You watch them often from the relative safety of your own stone scaffolding as they work on that steep, precarious slope, the hot, molten lead bubbling in their crucibles, the summer sun beating down on them. It is a vision of a special kind of hell. After a full season of this high-altitude labor, the great roof is finally complete. From the outside, the cathedral's familiar, iconic silhouette is now established. It has a body of stone and a great dark cap of lead. Inside, however, the nave is now a vast, dark, and cavernous space. The bright, open sky has been replaced by the immense, complex, and beautiful forest of the timber roof, a world of shadows and echoes. The cathedral is now protected from the elements. The rain can no longer wash away the fresh mortar. The wind no longer howls through the empty stone shell. The great echoing space is now quiet, still, and waiting. The carpenters have done their work. The stage is now set for you, the masons, to return and perform your greatest and most beautiful act of magic, to build a new stone sky beneath the wooden one. The work of the vaults is about to begin. With the great timber roof now in place, the interior of the cathedral is transformed into a vast, dark, and echoing cavern. The work of the sunlit high scaffolds is over, but it is replaced by a new and in many ways more challenging work site. An immense and complex new forest of scaffolding must be built inside the cathedral, a temporary wooden world that will allow you and the other masons to reach the ceiling. It's more than 100 feet above the floor. A temporary wooden floor is constructed, stretching from one side of the nave to the other, at the level where the vaults will begin to spring from the tops of the great stone piers. Working in this new space is a strange and disorienting experience. The air is still and cool, sheltered from the wind and the rain. Every sound, the tap of a mallet, a shouted command, the scraping of a stone endlessly in the great dark void, creating a constant ghostly chorus. Now, the true genius of the master mason and the master carpenter must come together. Before a single stone of the ceiling can be laid, a massive, temporary wooden support structure called a centering must be built. You watch the carpenters at their work with a mixture of awe and professional respect. They construct a series of immense, perfectly curved wooden arches on the ground, each one precisely shaped to match the intended curve of the stone vaults. These massive wooden skeletons are then hoisted piece by piece to the high platform where you are waiting. It is another series of dangerous, nerve-wracking lifts with the great crane. The centerings are assembled in place, spanning the vast 40-foot gap between the piers, creating a solid, reliable wooden mold upon which you will build the stone ceiling. One of these is required for each rectangular bay of the nave, a line of them receding down the long, dark hall, like the rib cage of some colossal wooden beast. With the centering in place, your work as a mason begins. You're no longer just a builder of walls. You're now a sculptor of architectural forces, a participant in a great vertical puzzle. The process is one of the most complex and intellectually demanding in the entire construction. First, the stone ribs of the vault must be laid. These are the bones of the ceiling. You and your team begin at the top of the pier, laying the first of the curved arch stones, the voussoirs, directly onto the wooden centering. Each stone has been cut in the lodge below to a precise, tapered shape. Your job is to set it in its bed of mortar with an absolute, unwavering precision. You lay the stones of the two great diagonal ribs first, the ones that will cross in the very center of the bay. Then you lay the transverse ribs that span the nave directly, and the longitudinal ribs that run along the walls. The work is slow, and you check every stone with your plumb line and your square. The curves must be perfect. The joints must be tight. The entire stone framework must be a perfect expression of the master mason's geometric design. The final stone to be placed in this skeleton is the most important of all. It is the keystone, the clef de voûte. It is a large, often ornately carved central boss stone that is placed at the very apex of the bay, where all the diagonal ribs meet. The master mason himself oversees its placement. It is carefully lowered into place, and as it settles, it locks the entire structure of the ribs together, a single central point that unites all the arching lines of force. With the stone ribs now forming a complete spider-like web across the wooden centering, the next phase begins. You and the other masons must now fill in the 4 great triangular panels, the webbing, or severe, that stretches between the ribs. You work from above, standing on another scaffold built on top of the centering itself. In the dark, cramped space between the emerging stone vault and the great timber roof. The work is awkward and uncomfortable. You lie on your side, spreading the mortar with your trowel onto the curved backs of the ribs, and then you lay the thin, light curved stones of the webbing into place, course by patient course. It is like building a great inverted stone boat. After weeks of this work, the entire bay is complete. It is a solid, continuous canopy of stone, but its immense weight is still resting entirely on the temporary wooden centering below. The mortar must now be given time to cure, to harden, to become one with the stone. For months, the structure is left to rest, a great silent collaboration between the rigid strength of the wood and the slow chemical magic of the hardening lime. Then comes the most tense and dramatic moment of the entire construction process, a moment known as the decentering. It is the moment of truth, when you will discover if your years of work, your precision, your skill, have resulted in a stable, self-supporting structure or a catastrophic failure. The master mason chooses a dry, still day. Still day, all other work in the nave ceases. The carpenters are called in, and a profound silence falls over the work site as they approach the centering. They do not simply knock it down. The process is one of slow, gradual release. With heavy mallets, they begin to knock out the small wooden wedges that are supporting the massive timber frame. Crack. The first wedge is knocked loose. The great wooden centering groans and settles by a fraction of an inch. A fine white dust of dried mortar rains down from above. Crack. Another wedge. Another groan. Everyone in the hall stands motionless, their faces turned upwards, watching, listening. The carpenters work their way around the structure, slowly, deliberately releasing the pressure. Then, with a final, great groaning shudder that echoes through the entire cathedral, the wooden centering settles and pulls away from the stone vault it has been supporting. It is now free. Here, in the vault, the great multi-ton canopy of stone is now holding itself up. It stands. A collective quiet sigh of relief goes through the assembled workers. The vault has held. The geometry is true. The forces of gravity are being gathered by the elegant soaring ribs and channeled. It's just as the master mason intended, down the great piers and into the deep foundations in the earth. You look up at the beautiful, soaring lines of the stone ceiling you have just helped to create. You feel a sense of pride so profound it is almost a religious experience. You have not just built a ceiling, you have defied gravity. You've created a piece of heaven out of stone. But you are standing in only one completed bay. You look down the long, dark length of the nave, and you see the next great wooden centering already being hoisted into place. The work is not over. It must be done again, and again, and again. The successful decentering of the first bay of the vault is a triumph of engineering and faith, a moment of profound relief that echoes through the entire worksite. But it is only a single victory in a long and arduous campaign. You, Thomas, now a seasoned mason with a deep, intuitive understanding of stone and stress, know that this success must be replicated perfectly, a dozen more times to complete the great ceiling of the nave. The work falls into a slow, patient, and highly organized rhythm. The construction of the nave becomes a great leapfrogging procession of labor, while your team of masons begins the painstaking work of laying the stone ribs on the newly erected wooden centering of the second bay. A team of carpenters is already working behind you, carefully dismantling the centering from the first, now self-supporting bay. On ahead of you, another team of carpenters is laying the high platform for the third bay. It is a slow, methodical caterpillar crawl of construction, inching its way year by year down the long, dark length of the nave. Your own skill has grown immensely.
No.
You are no longer just an apprentice following orders. You are now entrusted with the setting of the crucial ribstones yourself. You can feel in your hands and in your bones when a stone is perfectly seated in its mortar bed. You understand the complex three-dimensional geometry of the vaults, not as an abstract theory, but as a physical, tactile reality. While you and your guild are creating the stone sky within the cathedral, another team of masons is engaged in an equally dangerous and even more dramatic task on the outside. The immense weight of the stone vaults, the relentless outward pressure they exert on the thin, clear-storied walls, cannot be contained by the walls alone. They must be supported from the outside. They must be caught. This is the work of the flying buttress. You spend a season working on this outer crew, and the experience is a new kind of terror. The scaffolding here is more slender, more exposed. You're building great soaring arches of stone that leap from the heavy outer piers, fly over the roofs of the side aisles, and connect to the wall at the precise point where the vault's thrust is greatest. It is a true dance on the scaffolds. You work in the open air, 150 feet above the ground, with the wind constantly threatening to tear you from your perch. The stones you are setting are not massive, heavy blocks, but elegant, curved voussoirs that form a delicate skeletal arch. It is masonry at its most daring, its most beautiful, and its most perilous. The long fall is a constant, silent presence at your side. Years pass. You see boys who started as apprentices alongside you become journeymen, and you see old masters, their hands gnarled with age and their lungs thick with dust, retire from the high scaffolds to take on the lighter work of carving in the lodge below. The cathedral is a slow, hungry beast that consumes the working lives of men. Finally, the day comes when the last bay of the nave is vaulted, and the final great keystone is ready to be set. It is a moment of immense significance. The main body of the church, a project that has been underway for more than 30 years, is now structurally complete. There is no grand ceremony with a bishop. The celebration is a simple, private one for the men who did the work. The master mason brings a horn of ale up to the high scaffold, and you and your fellow masons, the carpenters and the foremen, all gather on the wooden platform beneath the newly completed vault. You drink a toast to the building, to the saints, and to the souls of the men who died creating this place. With the vaults in place, much of the interior scaffolding can now be removed. For the first time, you are able to stand on the stone floor of the cathedral and look up at the ceiling you have spent a decade of your life building. The sight is breathtaking. It is a vast, soaring canopy of stone, a forest of ribs that meet and diverge in a pattern of beautiful mathematical grace. The space no longer feels heavy and earthbound. It feels light, airy, and impossibly tall, drawing your eye and your spirit ever upwards. The dim, cavernous darkness has been replaced by a complex play of light and shadow as the sunlight from the high, still englazed clear-story windows illuminates the elegant curves of the vaults. You look at this magnificent stone sky, and you see not just its beauty, but the ghost of the labor that created it. In the perfect curve of each rib, you remember the creak and groan of the treadwheel crane. In the tightly jointed stones of the webbing, you remember the feeling of the wet mortar on your hands in the cramped, dark space above the centering. And in the great soaring height of it all, you remember the faces of the men you knew who fell from these scaffolds, their lives a part of the price of this beauty. You, Thomas, are now a man in your middle years, a master of your craft. You have survived the quarries, the foundations, and the perilous dance on the high scaffolds. The great, brutal, and heroic age of the cathedral's structural construction is over, but the work is far from finished. The cathedral is still a great gray and empty shell. It has a body of stone, but it does not yet have a soul. The work of carving, of glazing, of filling this space with color, with story, and with light, that is the work that still remains. The years continue to pass, flowing like the nearby river, a slow and steady current against which the great stone ship of the cathedral holds its ground. You are no longer Thomas the journeyman, a man in his prime, dancing on the high scaffolds. You are now Master Thomas, a senior mason in the lodge, your hair gray, your face a deep map of wrinkles carved by sun and wind, your hands gnarled and permanently stiffened around the remembered shape of a mallet and chisel. The great, chaotic work site of your youth has transformed. The thunderous noise of the quarries, the creaking groans of the great cranes, the shouts of 1,000 unskilled laborers, all this has faded. The work that remains is quieter, more focused, more refined. It is the work of finishing, of decorating, of giving a soul to the great stone body that your generation built. The Mason's Lodge is still the heart of the site, but the work done here has changed. You now spend your days not cutting the great structural blocks of the walls and piers, but overseeing the delicate and patient work of the carvers. If you watch a young mason, not unlike yourself, 40 years ago, as he works on a statue of a saint that will one day occupy a niche in the great facade, the process is one of slow, magical subtraction. The carver does not create a statue. He reveals the form that is already sleeping within the stone. You watch his hands, which are steady and sure. He uses a fine, pointed chisel to make the first rough outlines of the figure. A process, you know, is called bustling. Then, with a series of different, more delicate chisels, he begins to refine the shape. He carves the deep, graceful folds of the saint's robes. He gives shape to the hands, the delicate turn of a wrist, the individual fingers. The final and most difficult work is the face. This requires the greatest artistry, the ability to breathe life and character into the cold, unforgiving stone. The carver works for days on a single eye, on the subtle curve of a lip, on the texture of a beard. You watch as a block of inanimate limestone is slowly, patiently transformed into a figure of serene and holy dignity. This single statue is a year of one man's life, and the cathedral will require hundreds of them. While the carvers work their slow magic in the lodge, other craftsmen are busy within the now enclosed cathedral itself. A team of pavers is meticulously laying the great stone-flagged floor. They work on their knees, setting each massive flagstone into a bed of sand and mortar, using levels and straight edges to create a perfectly flat, continuous surface that flows like a great stone river down the length of the nave. In the center of the nave, they lay out an intricate circular labyrinth pattern in dark and light stone, a symbolic pilgrimage for the faithful to walk upon their knees. The work is now shared with new guilds, craftsmen who have arrived for the final decorative phase. The glazers have set up their own workshop, a place of intense heat and brilliant color. You pause to watch them, fascinated by their strange alchemical art. You watch a master glazier working on one of the great clear-story windows, the vast empty stone tracery of which you helped to build in your youth. He works from a full-size drawing, a cartoon laid out on a huge whitewashed wooden table. On this drawing are thousands of small, numbered pieces of colored glass, a vast and complex puzzle. The process is a marvel of skill. A craftsman takes a sheet of colored glass, a deep, sapphire blue, and, using a hot iron tool, he expertly cracks and groans the glass along a marked line, creating a perfect curved shape. Another artisan sits at a desk, painting the details onto the pieces of glass, the face of an angel, the folds of a robe, the letters of a holy inscription. He uses a special, dark enamel, a mixture of ground glass, lead, and wine, which he applies with a fine, delicate brush. These painted pieces are then fired in a hot kiln, a process that permanently fuses the black enamel onto the surface of the colored glass. Then comes the assembly. All the thousands of individual pieces of glass are fitted together, their edges slotted into the grooves of thin, flexible strips of lead called cames. Each joint is then soldered shut, creating a single, massive, and incredibly heavy panel of colored glass. Finally, the day comes for the installation of the first of these great windows. You stand on the newly paved floor of the nave and watch as the glazers, working on an internal scaffold, hoist the great panel into place. They carefully, skillfully, fit it into the stone tracery you built so long ago, sealing it with mortar. For now, the window is dark, its outer surface covered with a protective layer of whitewash. But when all the panels of the great window are in place, the whitewash is cleaned away. The afternoon sun, which for decades has only illuminated a world of gray stone and brown wood, now streams through the colored glass. The effect is transformative, a miracle of light and color. A great, jeweled and divine light floods the nave. The pale limestone walls are washed in pools of deep blue, ruby red, and emerald green. The very air seems to be made of color. The story of a saint's life is told in a silent, luminous narrative. The cathedral, for so long a monochrome world of labor and stone, is finally beginning to breathe with a soul of color and light. The installation of the great stained glass windows continues for years. Slow and painstaking process of transforming the high empty openings in the stone walls into a breathtaking tapestry of colored light. One by one, the stories of the Bible and the lives of the saints are told in shimmering, silent glass filling the once somber nave with a divine and ever-changing glow. As this work progresses and the vast interior space becomes a kaleidoscope of color, a momentous decision is made by the bishop and the cathedral chapter. Though the great towers are little more than stumps, and the facade is still a naked expanse of uncarved stone, the nave itself is now a usable, sacred space. The cathedral, for the first time in the 50 years since its foundation stone was laid, will be opened for a public mass. A great temporary wooden wall is erected to seal off the still active construction site of the transept and the choir. The floor is swept clean of the last of the stone dust, and for the first time, the great wooden doors are thrown open to the people of the city. You, Thomas, now a senior master in the lodge, stand at the back of the nave, a quiet, anonymous figure in the great crowd. You are surrounded by the merchants, the nobles, and the common folk of the city, their faces upturned, their eyes wide with awe. For them, this is a miracle, a magnificent house of God that seems to have appeared as if by magic. For you, it is a landscape of memory. The service begins. The great space is filled with the sound of the choir, their voices rising and soaring up to the vaulted ceiling you helped to build. The sound is transformed by the stone. It is no longer a collection of individual voices, but a single resonant and holy wave of music that seems to emanate from the very walls themselves. The bishop, a small brightly colored figure at the distant altar, chants the liturgy, and the air grows thick with the familiar holy scent of incense. You watch as the colored light from the great windows, the light of the saints and the prophets, moves slowly across the stone floor and illuminates the faces of the congregation. You see the awe, the reverence, the profound emotional connection these people have with this space. In this moment, the building is transformed for you as well. For your entire life, it has been a place of work, a place of dust, of noise, of danger, of mud, of sweat, of cold, of pain. You have known it as a quarry, a foundation trench, a scaffold, a workshop. But now, filled with music, with light, and with prayer, it has finally become what it was always intended to be: a cathedral, a great silent vessel designed to carry the human spirit towards God, and a feeling of profound, quiet, and overwhelming satisfaction settles deep in your bones. The brutal reality of your labor has been transfigured into a thing of transcendent beauty. But the work is not over. The cathedral may be in use, but it will not be truly finished for another 100 years. The day after the great ceremony, the familiar sounds of the worksite, the tap, tap, tap of the carver's mallets, the creak of winches, the shouts of the foreman resume. Your own role continues to change. You're an old man now. The strength for heaving great stones is long gone. The fine control needed for carving is slipping from your stiff, arthritic hands. Your eyes are no longer sharp enough to check the perfect straightness of a line. You no longer work on the high scaffolds. Your world is now the mason's lodge. You have become a teacher, a keeper of the craft. You are a living repository of the cathedral's history. You spend your days instructing the new generation of apprentices, young boys with the same mix of fear and ambition that you had when you first arrived at the quarry 60 years ago. They are the grandsons of the men you started with. You teach them how to hold a chisel, how to read the grain of the stone, how to swing a mallet with a clean and efficient stroke. You show them how to use the old, worn wooden templates to lay out the curve of an arch. You pass on the secrets of the guild, the quiet, hard-won knowledge that is never written down, but is passed from master to apprentice, hand to hand, generation after generation. You have a son of your own, a journeyman now, his body strong, his hands skilled. You watch him as he works on a complex piece of tracery for one of the rose windows, and you feel a quiet, profound sense of continuation. You are a single mortal link in a great, unbroken chain of craftsmanship that stretches back for generations, and that will, through your son, stretch on for generations to come. The world outside the cathedral close has changed beyond recognition. Kings have died, wars have been fought, plagues have come and gone. But the cathedral remains a constant, a slow, patient, and monumental project that transcends the fleeting lives of the men who build it. One day, you hear a new sound in the city. It is a deep, resonant, and beautiful dong, a sound of immense power and clarity. It is the first of the great bells finally cast, blessed, and hoisted into one of the now completed towers. You sit in the doorway of your small house, and you listen as the bell rings out over the city, its voice a new and permanent part of the life of the town. Your work, your physical labor, is done. You have given your entire life to this single great creation. You have helped to dig it from the earth, and you have helped it to touch the sky. You live out your final years in a small, simple house in the cathedral close, in the very shadow of the great stone mountain you helped to create. Your working life is over. Your hands, gnarled and stiff, can no longer hold a chisel, and your back is a permanent, curved arch of old age. But you are a man of immense, quiet respect in the community. You are one of the last of the first generation, one of the few men still living who remembers the quarry and the digging of the great foundations. Your days are now governed by the new, great voice of the city. You wake to the sound of the cathedral's bells ringing for the morning lauds, and you go to bed to the sound of them ringing for the evening vespers. The cathedral, which was the work of your life, has now become the clock of your final years. It's beautiful. Resonant voice, a constant and comforting companion. Some afternoons, when your old bones are not aching too much, you walk the short distance to the cathedral. You are no longer a worker here. You are a visitor, a pilgrim in your own creation. You push open the heavy oak doors and step out of the bright, noisy world and into the vast, cool, and silent space within. You walk the great, stone-flagged nave, your wooden staff tapping softly on the floor. The air is cool and smells of old stone, of incense, and of the beeswax from 100 prayer candles. Light filtering through the great jeweled stained-glass windows is a soft, colored twilight, a silent, holy atmosphere. You see the people of the city kneeling in the side chapels, their lips moving in silent prayer. This is what it was all for. You run your hand, your skin as dry and wrinkled as old parchment, over the cool, smooth surface of one of the great piers. You can feel the subtle, almost imperceptible undulations of the stone, the faint marks of a claw chisel from a lifetime ago. You try to remember if this was a stone that you yourself cut, a stone that you helped to set, but it is impossible. There have been too many stones, too many years. You know that somewhere deep inside this massive pillar is your own mason's mark, the small crossed circle you carved with such pride as a young man. It is a secret, a tiny, anonymous signature hidden in the heart of a masterpiece. A quiet testament to the fact that you were here. You find a place on a simple wooden bench at the back of the nave, and you sit and you look. You look up at the soaring, graceful lines of the vaults, a stone sky that you helped to weave together. You look at the brilliant, colored stories being told in the great windows. You look at the statues of the saints, their stone faces looking down with a serene and eternal patience. You think of the immense, unimaginable span of time contained within these walls. You think of the men you knew, the friends of your youth who died in the quarry, or in the great crane accident, or simply from the slow, grinding exhaustion of the work. Their bones are dust now, but their labor, their sweat, and their very lives are still here, captured and held forever in the strength and the beauty of this place. You think of your son, who is now the master mason, working high above on the scaffolding of the still unfinished North Tower. and you think of your grandson, a boy of 10, who has just begun his own apprenticeship in the lodge, learning to hold a chisel, just as you did, what seems like 1,000 years ago. The work is truly unending. You realize that you have not just been building a church. You've been part of something that has given your own small, difficult life a meaning and a permanence it could never have had on its own. The brutal reality of the labor, the years of pain, of cold, of fear, have all been transformed, transmuted into this great, silent, and beautiful prayer of stone and light. It will stand for 1,000 years, long after your name and your son's name and his son's name are all forgotten. And that is enough. The great bells begin to ring again, their deep, resonant vibrations filling the nave. It is the call to evening prayer. Your long day is over. Your life of labor is done. You rise slowly, your old bones protesting, and you make your way out of the great cathedral one last time, leaving it to its music, to its light, and to its God. Our journey with the cathedral builder is now at an end. Oh, we have heard the sharp crack of a hammer on stone, felt the dizzying height of the wooden scaffolds, and witnessed the slow, patient birth of a stone giant. It was a world where faith was measured in tons of limestone, where a man's entire life could be dedicated to a single, sacred project, and where the brutal reality of daily labor was transformed into a thing of transcendent and enduring beauty. That world of dust, sweat, and the slow rising of the walls has now faded away, leaving only the quiet of the present moment. The builder's long and arduous life is over, and now so is yours. There is nothing left to do but to rest, to let go of the day, and to drift into the deep and peaceful sleep that you deserve. Rest now, sleep well.